The rain hammered against the apartment window like shards of glass, each drop a warning that tonight would change everything. Saraphina Moretti sat on the edge of the sofa, knees tucked to her chest, staring at the gray puddles forming on the cracked concrete outside. Her father had been gone for 3 months, vanishing into shadows and whispered threats, leaving her to navigate the remnants of his world. The men in suits, the angry voices, the secrets whispered in the dead of night. They were all gone, but the fear lingered, heavier than ever. Something inside her told her she wouldn't be alone tonight. She barely had time to gather her thoughts before a black van rolled silently down the street. It moved like a predator, swallowing the dim glow of the streetlights, and came to a smooth stop in front of her building. 2 men stepped out, their coats slick with rain, faces hidden under hats, gloves dark as midnight. One of them reached for her arm. "You're coming with us," he said, his voice calm, final, leaving no room for protest. Her heart hammered, but she didn't scream. She didn't fight. Resistance was pointless. "Why?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the rain. "It's about your father," the other said. Before she could respond, they gripped her firmly, unyielding, unrelenting. The van door slammed, and darkness swallowed her whole. She pressed her hands to her chest, whispering a prayer she wasn't even sure she believed. "God, help me survive this night." The van moved quickly, silently, through the streets. The rain blurred the city into streaks of gray and gold. Seraphina's reflection in the tinted window stared back at her, pale, terrified, yet determined. Every instinct screamed at her to flee, but she had nowhere to run. The mansion that awaited her wasn't just a building. It was a fortress, a cage, a sentence. When the van finally stopped, she was led into a courtyard that seemed to rise from the fog like a fortress from another era. Guards in black coats and polished boots watched her every move, eyes sharp and calculating. Iron gates swung open, revealing marble steps leading to a massive stone mansion, its walls slick with rain. Every detail screamed power, control, and danger. She felt like prey on display. At the top of the grand staircase, a woman in black silk waited, standing straight as a statue, eyes calculating every move she made. She raised a hand to her attendants. "Undress her, bathe her, dress her," the woman commanded, voice smooth and cold. Seraphina flinched. "Why?" The woman's lips curved, not a smile, not a threat, something colder, sharper. "Because you're getting married tonight." Inside the upper chambers, Seraphina's world shifted entirely. She was stripped of her clothes, washed, and styled until she barely recognized herself. Her hair curled perfectly, nails manicured, skin lightly dusted with a perfume that smelled of fire and roses. A gown of black silk was placed in her trembling hands, clinging to her body like a warning. Looking in the mirror, she saw a stranger. The girl staring back was pale, terrified, and yet poised. For the first time, a chill ran through her bones. She was becoming something the world would notice, something she did not want to be. The mansion itself seemed alive. Every echo, every shadow, every flicker of candlelight was a reminder. She was trapped. Every servant, every guard, every polished suit was part of a machine she could not escape. And yet, she could not stop herself from wondering what awaited her in the hall. The doors opened to a room filled with flickering candlelight, white roses lining a long aisle. Men in dark suits whispered among themselves. Women in jewels glanced at her, murmuring her name. No music played. No groom waited. Her heartbeat thundered in her chest as the doors at the far end of the hall swung open. He walked in. Dante Blackwood. Tall, broad, dark-haired. With eyes like shards of ice, he moved with the confidence of a predator who had never known defeat. Every step he took seemed to silence the room. The walls, the candles, the whispers, all disappeared under the weight of his presence. His gaze fell upon her, piercing, unflinching. "You belong to me now," he said, voice low, controlled, carrying both a threat and a promise. It wrapped around her like chains she could not break. The priest rushed through the ceremony, hands shaking. Guests murmured. The ring on her finger felt impossibly heavy. She whispered her vows, trembling. When Dante's lips brushed hers, it was not a kiss. It was a sentence. "You're not my wife," he murmured. "You're my warning." Seraphina's first night in the mansion was unlike anything she had ever imagined. The room was vast, cold, and silent, its high ceilings swallowing any sense of comfort. Black silk sheets covered the bed like a shadow she could not touch, and the marble floor beneath her feet felt like ice. Dante Blackwood poured himself a drink, not looking at her, as though her presence was irrelevant. "Your father stole 10 million pounds from me. Killed my brother. Disappeared. You live because I decided not to kill you," he said, his voice measured, almost casual, but every word struck her like a blade. "Then why marry me?" she asked, barely above a whisper, her voice trembling. He finally turned, eyes sharp as knives. "Because killing you would have been mercy." Her knees gave out, and she sank to the floor. The reality of her life, of her choices, of the world she was trapped in, pressed down on her like a weight she could not lift. Tears burned behind her eyes, but she forced herself to sit straight, to breathe. She had survived before. She would survive now. But this was a cage unlike any other. The next days passed in a haze of rules and observation. Every movement was watched, every word noted. She learned quickly. The mansion was not just a home. It was a battlefield, a test, and a prison all at once. Meals were delivered in silence. The guards' eyes followed her everywhere. Small gestures, tiny mistakes, could earn punishment or worse, disapproval. It was during one of these silent days that Lucien Vale appeared. He was unlike the others, kind, careful, his presence a soft contrast to the cold authority of Dante. He brought books, blankets, and whispered advice on navigating the mansion's endless rules. For the first time in months, Saraphina laughed. But every smile she gave him was noted. Every fleeting glance watched. Dante observed from the shadows, his jaw tightening each time Lucien's soft gaze met hers. And she felt the weight of his scrutiny in ways she could not yet name. Night brought no relief. The mansion whispered in darkness. Shadows stretched along the marble floors, footsteps echoed, doors creaked, and the wind moaned through the cracks in the walls. Seraphina's dreams were filled with fractured memories. Her father, Dante's lost brother, faceless men with knives. In her nightmares, she ran endlessly through twisting corridors, never reaching safety, always haunted by his cold eyes. Yet even in sleep, she could feel Dante's presence, watching, waiting, judging, protecting, threatening. One evening, the tension snapped. A guard, perhaps testing her, lunged, weapon raised. Dante appeared in the doorway like a storm, moving faster than thought. He shoved her behind him, blood spraying across her hands as he wrestled with the man. For the first time, she saw vulnerability in him, the human beneath the ice. His voice was broken, almost soft. "Why are you still here?" "Because you saved me," she whispered, gripping his sleeve as if it were a lifeline. For a brief moment, something unspoken passed between them. An understanding, a crack in the wall that separated predator from prey, captor from prisoner. But before she could linger on it, Dante stepped back, regaining his control, and the distance returned. Days blurred into weeks. Seraphina began to notice small patterns. The way Dante's eyes softened when he thought she wasn't looking. The way Lucien's hand lingered on hers when he passed her a book. Small acts of kindness, of attention, of recognition, threads of light woven through the darkness. And yet, she could not forget why she was there. Every whispered word from servants, every glance from guards, every shadow in the halls reminded her she was trapped. And someone, somewhere, was watching, waiting for her to slip, to fail, to betray. One night, alone in the quiet of her room, she pressed her hands against the black silk sheets and whispered to herself, "I will survive this. I will not be broken." The words were a promise, both fragile and fierce. She did not yet understand that survival would not be enough, that she would have to learn to fight, to manipulate, to wield fear and power like the man who had made her his warning. And above all, she knew one truth with absolute certainty. The true test had not yet begun. The days stretched into a rhythm of fear and quiet observation. But in the stillness, Seraphina began to notice the subtleties that defined the mansion, the pulse of power, the shadows that moved with purpose, and the men who obeyed without question. Every movement, every glance, every whispered word was a test. She had learned to walk lightly, to speak softly, to measure her breaths as if they could betray her. Lucien became her lifeline. He appeared at unexpected moments, carrying books, small notes, even food when she was too afraid to eat alone. He spoke in gentle tones, never forcing attention, yet always ensuring she had something to anchor her to reality. One evening, as the rain lashed against the windows, he pressed a hand to her arm. "You're stronger than they think," he whispered. "And stronger than you think, too." Seraphina felt warmth rise in her chest. A dangerous, forbidden warmth. She wanted to lean on him, to let him guide her through the darkness, but every time she did, she felt Dante's eyes on her, sharp, measuring, and impossible to escape. Dante's presence was a shadow in every room, a ghost in every corner. He moved silently, always observing, always knowing. The way he studied her made her skin prickle, a mixture of fear and something she could not name. Once, when she had lingered too long near the window, he appeared behind her without a sound. His voice was low, a blade against her ear. "You shouldn't linger," he said. "They're watching, and so am I." Her heart thundered, yet she could not step back. Something in his tone, part warning, part admiration, part claim, unsettled her. For the first time, she wondered if he was testing her, if he wanted her to react, to slip, to show fear. And yet, beneath that, there was a glimmer of something else. The nights were worse. Shadows twisted in impossible ways. Footsteps echoed in hallways she had already memorized, and distant whispers carried threats she could almost understand. She would lie in bed, staring at the black silk ceiling, and imagine herself running, fleeing, vanishing into the storm outside. But she never did. Every time she imagined escape, she felt Dante's invisible hand, his control, as if the mansion itself had conspired with him to keep her in place. Lucien tried to offer solace. He would slip small gestures in her days, a hand brushing hers as he passed a book, a quiet word, a note tucked under her pillow. And each time, her heart betrayed her with a thrill she didn't allow herself to feel. She knew it was dangerous, that his kindness could be as lethal as the sharpest blade. And yet, she craved it. One evening, Dante entered the study without warning. She froze, a book in her hands, the ink barely dry on the page she was reading. He did not speak at first. He circled the room like a predator examining prey. His eyes lingered on her, calculating, assessing, unyielding. "You read too much," he said finally, his voice soft but with an edge that cut through the quiet. "Knowledge is power, yes, but too much knowledge can be dangerous for someone like you." Seraphina swallowed, feeling the weight of his words press down. She wanted to argue, to defend herself, to show that she could handle the truths he withheld. But she didn't. She simply lowered her eyes, knowing that any defiance would be noticed and remembered. And yet, as he turned and left, a strange warmth lingered in the room. A hint that, despite the fear, despite the threat, she had begun to occupy a space in his world, whether she wanted it or not. It was during one of these long, tense nights that she first glimpsed the danger waiting beyond the mansion. A shadow flickered in the window. Not one of the guards, not Lucien, not Dante. Someone else. Someone watching. Her pulse spiked. Her breath caught. And she realized with a chill that the threat was not just here. It was out there, waiting, patient and cruel. Dante noticed her tension immediately. He appeared in the doorway, eyes narrowing. "You saw him," he said. "Yes," she whispered. He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him. "Good. Fear is useful," he said. "It keeps you alive, and it keeps you sharp." Seraphina's stomach turned at his words. Fear, yes. But there was something else in his gaze, a twisted kind of admiration, a measure of respect for the girl who had not yet broken, who had not yet succumbed to the cage he had built around her. Days passed in this rhythm of tension, observation, and small, forbidden glimpses of warmth. She learned the patterns of the guards, the silent rules of the mansion, and the subtle cues that Dante used to measure her. A twitch of her hand, the way she held herself, the way her eyes flicked toward Lucian when she thought no one was watching. Every detail mattered. Every detail was a test. And Saraphina realized something chilling. She was no longer just surviving. She was learning. Learning how to navigate, how to endure, how to exist within the walls of a place designed to break her. And, most dangerous of all, she felt the first flickers of understanding about Dante himself. That beneath the cold, ruthless exterior, there was something she could never fully grasp, something that both terrified and drew her closer. He was a lifeline in a place designed to suffocate her. But even as relief surged, she could feel the heat of Dante's gaze on her back. Always watching, always measuring. That night, she lay awake on the black silk sheets, listening to the storm battering the windows. Every distant creak, every whisper of the wind made her flinch. She replayed the events of the evening, wondering if she had done something wrong, if she had given even the slightest hint of weakness. Fear was constant, but it had begun to evolve into something more dangerous: awareness. She was learning the rhythms of the mansion, the patterns of those who inhabited it, and even the quiet signals from Dante that hinted at his moods, his judgments, and his unspoken expectations. Lucian's voice echoed in her memory, gentle and firm. Strength isn't just surviving. It's understanding, anticipating, and sometimes manipulating. You have it in you. The next morning, a new challenge appeared. Dante had arranged for her to walk the halls alone, a test he had never given before. Guards watched from corners, their eyes sharp and unforgiving. The hall seemed impossibly long, stretching farther than she had realized, and every step made her pulse quicken. She felt exposed, vulnerable, and yet the test was not physical. It was psychological. Halfway down the hallway, a man stepped from the shadows, his face hidden beneath a hood. Seraphina's breath caught. She had no weapon, no escape. Her body tensed. The man reached for her, and she instinctively dodged, stumbling against the cold marble. Before she could react further, Dante appeared. His presence was sudden, overwhelming, a shadow moving faster than thought. He seized the man, a single swift motion, and threw him aside. Blood trickled from the intruder's temple, and he slumped unconscious to the floor. "You're being tested," Dante said, voice low and controlled. "Always be ready. Always know your surroundings. Fear is not weakness, it's preparation." Seraphina nodded, trembling, but inside, something had shifted. She realized that she was no longer just surviving. She was learning. Every step, every breath, every glance could mean life or death. And slowly, dangerously, she felt herself adapting. That evening, as she sat near the fireplace, Lucian brought her a book on strategy and survival. His hands lingered near hers as he set it down, a silent gesture of care. "You're becoming capable," he whispered. "Stronger than you realize." Seraphina's chest tightened. Strength, survival, knowledge, all of it mattered. And yet, the warning in Dante's eyes never left her. He was always present, a constant reminder that her life was his domain, and every action she took was a performance under his scrutiny. As the night deepened, a shadow crossed the window, different from the guards, different from the usual observers. Someone outside, watching, waiting, threatening. Her pulse quickened, and instinct told her this was only the beginning. Dante entered silently, his figure imposing, eyes sharp. He noted the change in her breathing, the tension in her shoulders. "You saw him," he said quietly. "Yes," she whispered. "Good," he murmured, stepping closer. "Fear is useful. It keeps you alive, and it keeps you sharp." Seraphina swallowed hard. There was truth in his words. Fear, yes, but something else lingered beneath them. A dark, unspoken recognition. She realized, with both dread and fascination, that Dante's eyes measured more than obedience. They measured her essence, her will, her capacity to endure. And for the first time, She understood that survival alone would not be enough. She would need cunning, courage, and strength she had yet to discover. The mansion was quieter than usual that night, but Seraphina sensed it before she saw it. A subtle shift in the air, a brush of shadow along the far hallway, the faintest click of polished shoes on marble. She stiffened, instinct sharp, as though the walls themselves whispered danger. Lucian appeared beside her, as if he had felt it too. He didn't speak at first, only slid his hand briefly across her back in a silent gesture of reassurance. "Someone is here," he whispered. "Not one of us, not one of Dante's. Watch carefully." Her pulse raced, every muscle tensed. The mansion had become a living entity, its corridors a maze of traps and secrets. Every movement mattered, and every sound carried the weight of life or death. Seraphina's mind flashed back to her father, to the world he had warned her about, to the lessons she had barely remembered in the fear of youth. Now, the stakes were immediate, personal. A figure emerged from the shadows, sleek and deliberate. Seraphina's breath caught. The intruder's hood obscured the face, but the body language radiated confidence and menace. She froze, every instinct screaming to flee, though she knew there was no escape. Dante appeared behind her, silent, as though conjured by the very shadows. He moved faster than thought, a blur of motion. The intruder lunged, but Dante intercepted him with lethal precision, a single motion breaking the man's momentum. Blood trickled from the side of the attacker's head, and he collapsed. Seraphina's stomach churned as Dante's eyes met hers. Cold, assessing, impossible to read. "You must always be ready," he said quietly. "The world outside these walls does not forgive weakness. Fear is survival, and survival is strength." The encounter left her shaking, but a new realization had taken root. She was no longer passive, no longer merely a prisoner. Every challenge, every shadow, every silent threat honed her awareness. She felt the first dangerous flicker of confidence, the awareness that she could survive, maybe even outsmart, some of the dangers around her. Lucian knelt beside her after the intruder was dragged away. His touch was gentle, almost comforting, though it carried the danger of forbidden familiarity. "You handled that well," he said softly. "Stronger than you realize." Seraphina's heart thudded painfully in her chest. Strength, survival, awareness. She understood now that these were not abstract lessons. They were the foundation of her life in this place. And yet, beneath the fear and the rigor, a complicated thread of curiosity, of fascination, had begun to weave between her and Dante. The nights were becoming a maze of shadows and subtle tests. Dante's presence was always there, even when he was absent. Every look, every silence, every cold word was measured, deliberate. She began to notice patterns, a twitch of the eye, a shift in tone, a subtle gesture. He was assessing her constantly, judging her not just for obedience, but for resilience, for spirit, for something deeper he refused to name. Lucian, in contrast, was a quiet sanctuary, a flicker of warmth amid the ice. He showed her the small things, hidden passages in the mansion, subtle tricks to avoid attention, the soft cadence of guards' routines. And though she depended on him, she knew that dependence was dangerous. One wrong move, one slip of emotion, could unravel everything. Then, as if to remind her how precarious her position was, a message arrived from an unknown source. A folded note slipped beneath her door. The words were simple, chilling. "They are coming. Be ready." Fear surged through her, sharp and immediate. Someone beyond the mansion had noticed her, had targeted her, and she realized, with a cold certainty, that her life had become a game far larger and far more dangerous than she had ever imagined. Dante appeared in the doorway moments later, the soft click of his boots echoing through the marble hall. He didn't speak, only studied her. His eyes, as always, measured, calculated, and unreadable. And yet, in that moment, Seraphina felt the complexity of his presence. Not just threat, not just captor, but the impossible possibility that he might, in some strange and dangerous way, be tethered to her survival as much as she was tethered to his will. The next morning, Saraphina awoke to the mansion bathed in an almost surreal golden light. Sunlight poured through the towering windows, scattering across the marble floors and gilded railings. But the warmth of the light did little to warm her heart. She had slept uneasily, dreaming of shadows lurking just beyond the mansion gates, and of Dante's dark gaze following her every move, even in the brightest of dreams. Lucien found her in the grand breakfast room, hands clasped around a delicate cup of tea. "You didn't sleep well," he observed softly, watching her run a hand through her long curls. There was concern in his eyes, a gentle gravity that contrasted with Dante's cold dominance. Saraphina nodded, swallowing hard. "I keep thinking someone is watching. Last night, the intruder, it felt like it wasn't over." Lucien's expression darkened. "It's not. You're not just in Dante's world. You're in theirs too. Outside threats aren't like him. Outside threats don't care about games or obsession. They want you broken." She shivered. The mansion, as secure as it seemed, was only a fragile barrier against forces she couldn't yet comprehend. And yet, she had survived so far. Somehow, that small spark of resilience had begun to glow brighter. Later that evening, Dante appeared without warning in the library, where she had taken refuge among the towering shelves of books. His presence filled the room like a shadow in motion, and for a moment, she froze, heart hammering. "You were wandering too far today," he said, voice low and precise, each word measured. "I do not tolerate carelessness." Seraphina's stomach twisted, a mixture of fear and something else she refused to name. I wasn't careless. I was just—" Her voice faltered under his unrelenting gaze. Curious, he finished for her, stepping closer. The air around him seemed to thicken, charged with power and intensity. Curiosity is dangerous. It can get you killed. And yet, the way he said it, the intensity in his eyes, it was as if he were testing her, weighing her spirit, her will, her courage. The line between captor and predator, teacher and tormentor, blurred with each measured step he took toward her. Seraphina's mind was a storm. She had to understand this world, this power, if she was going to survive, maybe even thrive. She began observing Dante more carefully, noticing the smallest gestures, the subtle changes in tone when he spoke to her versus when he addressed the guards. She started memorizing routines, which doors remained unlocked when the guards shifted positions, the patterns of light and shadow across the mansion's corridors. Lucien noticed the change immediately. "You're learning," he said one evening, sitting across from her in a quiet wing of the mansion. "You're becoming dangerous in the best way. Not for me, but for him. And that could save you someday." Seraphina felt the weight of that statement. Dangerous for him? She had never considered herself a threat to Dante. But the idea nestled somewhere deep in her mind. That power wasn't just in his hands, and perhaps it never truly had been. That night, the warning came again. A note slipped under her door, identical in style to the first, but more urgent. "They are closer. Be ready." Fear surged, but so did something else, determination. Seraphina realized she could not remain passive. The mansion, the men, the rules, they were not just obstacles. They were instruments, and she would learn to play them. Dante watched from the shadows of the hallway as she read the note, a dark, unreadable expression on his face. He moved closer, his presence, both suffocating and magnetic. "You are beginning to understand," he said softly, almost a whisper. "But understanding is only the first step. Compliance, that is survival." And in that moment, Seraphina understood this was not just a game of fear. It was a game of power, desire, and the subtle, dangerous dance of control. And she intended to learn every step. The mansion was quieter than usual that night. Even the rain seemed to hold its breath, tapping softly against the tall windows, as if warning of the storm to come. Seraphina had grown restless. She couldn't sleep. The warning note from the previous night still clutched in her hands. She traced the words over and over. "They are closer. Be ready." Lucien appeared silently, as if he had emerged from the shadows themselves. "You shouldn't be alone," he murmured, his soft voice breaking the silence. "I can't stay hidden forever," Seraphina whispered back, her eyes scanning the dimly lit hallway. "I need to understand them. I need to understand him." Lucien's gaze softened. "Just don't let curiosity lead you into danger. Remember, you're still learning the rules of this world." Seraphina nodded, but she knew this was no longer a game she could watch from the sidelines. Every glance Dante gave her, every subtle shift in his tone, was a piece of the puzzle, and she intended to solve it. A sudden sound at the gates drew both of their attention. A tall figure in a hood approached the mansion entrance, moving with deliberate, almost predatory steps. The guards tensed, weapons glinting in the soft light, and Dante appeared silently behind them, his presence commanding and dangerous. Seraphina held her breath. Her heart pounded in her chest as she realized the intruder had made it past the outer gates. The mansion, her temporary prison and sanctuary, was no longer completely safe. Dante's eyes narrowed. "They're bold tonight," he said, his voice low and sharp. "And boldness is punished." Before anyone could move, Dante had already stepped forward. In a blur, he intercepted the figure, pinning him against the cold stone wall. Seraphina's stomach churned as the struggle unfolded, swift, brutal, controlled. Every movement of Dante's was precise, practiced, terrifying, yet protective. When it was over, the intruder slumped unconscious, and Dante turned to her, his gaze dark and smoldering. "Do you see why I cannot allow freedom?" he asked softly, his fingers brushing a stray curl from her face. "This world is dangerous, and outside them, there is me." The encounter left Seraphina shaken but alive. That night, she didn't sleep. Instead, she paced the library corridors, retracing every step, every shadow, every sound from the evening. She realized she had to be more than a passive observer. She had to anticipate, to predict, to survive, not just for herself, but for the life she might one day choose to reclaim. Lucien, ever silent but always present, watched her with a mixture of pride and caution. "You're learning," he said quietly, as if he had been reading her thoughts. "Not everyone can see what's coming before it happens." Seraphina's lips curved into a small, determined smile. "I'm learning," she whispered, "and soon I'll be ready for them." From the shadows, Dante observed her transformation. There was a new fire in her eyes, a flicker of resilience he hadn't seen before. He stepped closer, his breath brushing the back of her neck, his hand resting lightly on the doorknob of the library. "You are clever," he murmured, his voice low and dangerous. "But cleverness is a weapon, and weapons can cut both ways." Seraphina froze, not from fear, but from the thrill of understanding the subtle game he played. Their relationship was no longer one-sided. It was a dangerous dance, a slow burn of power, desire, and mutual understanding. And the stakes were higher than ever. For the first time since her arrival at the mansion, Seraphina stopped thinking only about survival. She started thinking about freedom. The idea came quietly, like a whisper she almost ignored. It began with small things, noticing which corridor lights flickered at night, which guards were distracted during shift changes, which doors took longer to lock. She memorized the sound of footsteps, the rhythm of the mansion, the breathing of the place that had imprisoned her. Lucien noticed her watching everything. "You're planning something," he said one night as they stood near the garden doors. Lucien had told her once, casually, that he worked nights. She prayed he'd be awake. She found him near the garden doors, staring out into the rain like he was waiting for something he didn't deserve. He turned when he sensed her presence. "Seraphina," he said softly, "you shouldn't be wandering." She swallowed hard. "Neither should you." A faint smile tugged at his lips. It didn't reach his eyes. "You look like someone about to disappear," he murmured. Her breath caught. "Lucien, I can't stay here anymore." The words spilled out before she could stop them. His jaw tightened. "You're safer here than you think." She laughed bitterly. "You call this safe?" She gestured at the towering walls, the armed guards, the cameras, the silence. This is a prison dressed up as a palace. Lucien didn't answer right away. The rain hammered harder against the glass. Finally, he said quietly, "If you try to leave, he will find you." Her voice trembled. "Then help me make sure he doesn't." Silence stretched between them, heavy and dangerous. Lucien turned away from her, rubbing a hand down his face. "You don't understand what you're asking me to do." "I understand exactly what I'm asking," she said. "I'm asking you to help me live." They stood there for what felt like hours. Finally, Lucien exhaled sharply. "There's a service tunnel beneath the West Wing," he said. "It was built decades ago. It connects to the old vineyard road. The guards don't patrol it anymore." Her heart slammed into her ribs. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because," he said softly, "I'm tired of watching you die slowly." Her knees nearly buckled. "I will help you escape." "When?" she whispered. "Tomorrow night," he said. "There's a storm coming. Thunder will mask the cameras. Half the guards will be redeployed to the East Wing for a weapons transfer." Hope flared so sharply it hurt. "And Dante?" she asked. Lucien hesitated. "He'll be in the city." Relief flooded her chest. For the first time since her kidnapping, escape felt real. That night, she couldn't sleep. She lay awake staring at the ceiling, imagining the tunnel, the road, the moment her feet touched open ground. She imagined breathing air that wasn't filtered through fear. She imagined calling the police, running, vanishing. She imagined never seeing Dante again, and her chest tightened. She hated that. She hated that some broken, traitorous part of her didn't want to leave without understanding him, without saying something, without knowing whether he had lied about everything or only about some of it. The next day passed in slow torture. Dante barely spoke to her. He watched her, longer than usual, as if he could feel something slipping through his fingers. She avoided his eyes. Her hand shook every time he came near. At dinner, he leaned toward her and said quietly, "You seem distracted." Her heart slammed into her ribs. "I just didn't sleep well." His gaze lingered on her face, unreadable. "Something is changing," he said softly. "I can feel it." She forced a weak smile. "It's just nerves." But she knew he didn't believe her. That evening, Lucien slipped her a folded coat. Dark, plain, no utility, no phone, nothing that tracks, he whispered. Her hands trembled as she took it. "What if this is a trap?" she asked. Lucien's eyes softened. "If it is," he said quietly, "then I die with you." Her breath hitched. They moved just after midnight. The storm came exactly as Lucien had promised. Thunder shook the mansion. Rain swallowed sound. The guards shifted. The cameras flickered. They slipped into the forgotten corridor behind the wine cellar. Every step felt like betrayal. Of Dante. Of fear. Of the strange, dangerous world that had become her reality. They reached the iron door. Lucien typed in the code. Once. Twice. The keypad blinked red. Her stomach dropped. "Try again," she whispered. Lucien's hands shook as he typed. Still nothing. Then the corridor lights came on. Slow. Deliberate. Footsteps echoed behind them. Heavy. Controlled. Unavoidable. A voice cut through the darkness. "Did you really think I wouldn't notice?" The rain came down like the sky was trying to wash the world clean. Thunder rolled so violently that the walls of the mansion trembled, the sound echoing through the endless corridors like a warning bell that came too late. Saraphina clutched the edges of her dark coat as she followed Lucien through the narrow service hallway behind the wine cellar. The air was cold and damp, smelling faintly of stone and old dust. Her bare footsteps made no sound on the marble floor, but in her mind, every step thundered like a gunshot. "Don't look back. Don't look back." Her heart was beating so hard she was certain Lucien could hear it. Every shadow looked like a guard. Every flicker of light felt like exposure. They moved quickly but carefully, hugging the walls, stopping whenever distant footsteps echoed too close. Once, Saraphina froze completely as a guard passed the far end of the corridor, unaware of the life-changing moment unfolding only meters away. Lucien placed a hand gently on her arm. "Breathe," he whispered. "You're shaking." "I can't stop," she whispered back. Her teeth chattered, whether from cold or fear, she couldn't tell. They reached the narrow stairwell leading down to the tunnel level. Lucien pulled out a small flashlight, shielding the beam with his palm so it wouldn't leak into the hallway. "This is it," he murmured. Her legs felt weak. "This doesn't feel real," she said. "It feels like I'm dreaming." He gave her a sad smile. "It will feel real when you're gone." They descended the stairs slowly. The iron door stood waiting. Old, heavy, rust creeping along its edges. A keypad glowed faintly on the wall beside it. Lucien stepped forward. Saraphina pressed her palm against the cold stone wall, grounding herself. Her hands were slick with sweat. "This is where I leave you," she whispered. Lucien turned to her. Rainwater dripped from his hair, his face unreadable in the dim light. "You don't owe me anything," he said quietly. "Just disappear." She nodded, unable to speak. He turned back to the keypad, typed in the code. The screen blinked. Red. Her stomach dropped. "Try again," she whispered. Lucien frowned. Typed again. Slower this time. More carefully. The keypad flashed red again. "No," he muttered. "That's not possible." Fear surged like a tidal wave. "Lucien," she whispered. "What's happening?" He stepped closer to the keypad. Typed a third time. Red. A cold, sick weight settled in her chest. The storm outside cracked like a bomb. The corridor lights flickered once, then stayed on, bright, unforgiving. Her blood turned to ice. Footsteps echoed behind them. Slow, measured, unhurried. Not guards, not rushed, not confused, controlled. Every instinct screamed one name. She turned. Dante stood at the end of the corridor. Suit flawless, hair dry, eyes burning. He looked like he had stepped out of hell and decided to wait. Her knees nearly gave out. Lucien went rigid. "I told you," Dante said softly, his voice carrying easily through the space. "You were being watched." Saraphina's throat closed. "You said he'd be in the city," she whispered to Lucien. Lucien's jaw clenched. "Elite." The word hit her harder than any slap. Her chest cracked open. "You lied to me?" Lucien's voice shook. "I was never going to get you out." Dante took a slow step forward. Then another. "You were testing her loyalty," Dante said coldly. "And mine." Lucien swallowed. "She would have died if I hadn't brought her here first." Saraphina stared at him, disbelief flooding her veins. "You played me," she whispered. Lucien's eyes were full of pain. "I was trying to save you the only way I knew how." Her laughter came out broken. "You lured me into a trap." Dante stopped directly in front of her. She couldn't look at him. She couldn't breathe. "You were going to run," he said quietly. She lifted her chin, tears spilling down her face. "Yes." He nodded once. "That's all I needed to know." The guards flooded the corridor. Lucien stepped back. Dante raised a hand. "Leave us." The guards froze, then obeyed. Silence swallowed the space. The storm roared outside. Saraphina hugged herself, shaking violently. "You lied about everything," she whispered. Dante's gaze softened just a fraction. "No," he said. "I lied about letting you go." She laughed bitterly. "Is there a difference?" He stepped closer. "You were never meant to survive out there," he said. "Not alone, not hunted, not with no protection." Her voice cracked. "So your solution was to cage me? To keep you alive? By destroying my life?" Silence. Then Dante said quietly, "Yes." He turned to Lucien. "You're done," he said coldly. Lucien bowed his head. "I know. Get out of my sight." Lucien left without looking at her. She felt the loss like a physical wound. Dante turned back to her. "You will not attempt this again," he said. Her body trembled with rage and grief. "You don't get to decide my life." His voice dropped. "Already did." Tears poured down her face. She hated him. She hated herself. She hated that some part of her still felt safer standing in front of him than she ever had standing alone in the dark. He stepped closer. She didn't move away. That terrified her more than anything. The corridor felt colder after Lucien disappeared. The iron door to the tunnel still stood behind her, mocking her with its silent refusal to open. Saraphina stood frozen in the middle of the hallway, rainwater dripping from her hair, her coat heavy against her skin, her heart shattered into too many pieces to count. Dante didn't touch her. He didn't shout. He didn't drag her away. He just stood there, watching her the way a predator watches wounded prey, not with hunger, but with something darker. Possession. You were going to leave me, he said quietly. The words were not a question. They were a verdict. Saraphina laughed, but it came out broken, hysterical, soaked in pain. You kidnapped me, she said. You locked me in a mansion. You took my life away. What exactly did you expect? His jaw clenched. You were alive, he said. That should have been enough. Her hands curled into fists. Alive isn't the same as living. Thunder rolled overhead. The lights flickered. She stepped toward him, anger finally overpowering fear. You don't get to act betrayed, she said. You don't get to look at me like I committed some crime against you. You are the criminal here. His eyes darkened. And yet, he said, you didn't run the first week. Or the second. You waited. You watched. You adapted. She flinched. Because he was right. You stayed, he continued. Long enough to learn my routines. Long enough to learn my weaknesses. She swallowed. I was surviving. And you were planning, he said coldly. Silence swallowed them. He stepped closer. She didn't move. That was the most dangerous thing of all. You used Lucien, he said. You let him give you hope. Her voice cracked. He gave me lies. You knew he was dangerous. I knew he was kind. Dante laughed softly. There is no kindness in my world. Her eyes burned with tears. Then why didn't you stop me sooner? She whispered. Why did you let me believe I could leave? His gaze softened for half a second. Because he wanted to see what you would choose. He didn't say it out loud. Instead, he said, because you needed to understand the truth. What truth? She demanded. That you don't belong anywhere else. Her breath hitched. That this world will not release you, he continued. And neither will I. She shook her head violently. You don't own me. He closed the distance between them. I don't need to, he said quietly. You're already mine. The words slammed into her chest like a physical blow. She raised her hand, slapped him. The sound echoed through the corridor. He didn't react, didn't move, didn't even blink. Her hand trembled. I hate you, she whispered. His voice dropped into something almost human. So do I. Silence shattered between them. The guards appeared at the far end of the corridor. Dante raised a hand. They stopped. He turned back to her. You will be confined to your room, he said. No books. No garden. No Lucien. No balcony. Her chest tightened. You're punishing me. I'm protecting you, he said. You're breaking me. He hesitated. Just for a second. Then hardened. You were already broken when I took you. The words destroyed her. They escorted her back to her room. She didn't fight. Didn't speak. Didn't cry. The door closed behind her with a soft, final click. She collapsed onto the floor. Curled into herself. Screamed into her hands until her throat burned. She thought her mother. Her old apartment. Her life. The tunnel door. Lucien's betrayal. Dante's eyes when he said, You're already mine. She wanted to die. She wanted to disappear. She wanted to rip her heart out and throw it at the walls. Hours passed. She didn't know how many. The door opened quietly. She didn't look up. Dante entered alone. He knelt in front of her. Didn't touch her. I will not force you to love me, he said quietly. But I will not let you die. Her laugh came out hollow. You think those are the only two options? Yes, he said. In my world, they are. She lifted her face. Her eyes were swollen. Her voice was empty. You don't even see me. You see a thing you can control. His voice cracked. You think I don't see you? He stood abruptly, ran a hand through his hair. You think I wanted to want you? He snapped. You think I planned this? She stared at him. He turned back to her. I saw you the night they were watching your apartment, he said. I saw the way you fed stray cats. I saw the way you stood up to a man twice your size of the market. I saw the way you refused to be small. Her breath caught. I took you because I couldn't let them take you first. Tears streamed down her face. You ruined my life. I saved it, he said. Silence. Then she whispered, Then why do I feel dead? He didn't answer. He left her room just before dawn. She didn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling. And for the first time since she was taken, she stopped planning her escape. The days after her confinement blurred into one long, silent punishment. Saraphina lost track of time. The curtains were always drawn. Meals appeared without faces. The guards never spoke. Dante never came. At first, She counted the hours by the change in light behind the thick velvet curtains. Then she stopped counting altogether. The mansion no longer felt like a prison. It felt like a tomb. She lay on the bed most days, staring at the ceiling, listening to the slow rhythm of her own breathing, wondering how a person could still be alive and feel so completely erased. She didn't cry anymore. She didn't scream. She didn't plan. She simply existed. On the fourth night, or maybe the fifth, the door opened. She didn't turn her head. She didn't care anymore. Dante entered quietly. He stood just inside the doorway for a long time, watching her motionless form on the bed. "You stopped eating," he said softly. She didn't respond. He walked closer, set a tray down on the table. "You'll die if you keep this up." She laughed weakly. "That's the point." He flinched, just slightly. He sat on the chair near the bed. Didn't touch her. Didn't command her. Didn't threaten her. "I owe you the truth," he said. She closed her eyes. "Do whatever you want," she whispered. "It won't change anything." His voice was low. "Your mother wasn't killed in a robbery." Her eyes snapped open. Her heart slammed against her ribs. "What?" she whispered. "The men who attacked her were hired," he said, "by my enemies. They were sending me a message." The room tilted. Her vision blurred. "You're lying," she said hoarsely. "I wish I were." She sat up slowly, like her body was no longer entirely hers. "My mother died because of you?" "Yes." The words shattered her. She screamed, a sound so raw and broken that it didn't even sound human. She lunged at him, beat her fists against his chest. "You did this," she sobbed. "You did this to me." He didn't stop her, didn't restrain her, didn't defend himself. He just stood there and took it. "I didn't know about you until after she was already dead," he said quietly. "By the time I traced it back to you, they were already watching your apartment." She collapsed against him. Her legs gave out. He caught her automatically, held her without crushing her. She tried to push him away, didn't have the strength. "They were going to take you," he whispered, "to torture you, to kill you, to send me your body piece by piece." Her breath came in violent gasps. "I took you because it was the only way to keep you alive." She shook her head violently. "You should have told me. You would have run. I would have had a choice. You would have died." Silence swallowed the room. He pulled away gently, kneeling in front of her, meeting her eyes. "I found your mother's killers," he said. "They're dead." Her breath hitched. "You killed them." "Yes." "Why?" "Because no one touches what's mine." The words sent a shiver down her spine. Then his voice softened. "And because she deserved justice." Her tears fell silently. Her entire life collapsed into a single, horrifying truth. She had been dragged into hell because hell had already found her first. He stood, walked to the window, pulled the curtains open. Moonlight flooded the room. "You think I enjoy this?" he said quietly. "Living like a monster? Taking people's lives? Ruining everything I touch?" He turned back to her. "You think I wanted you to see me like this?" She stared at him through tears. "Then let me go," she whispered. He shook his head. "I can't." "Because you love me?" she demanded bitterly. "Because my enemies will never stop hunting you," he said. "You're my weakness now." The word echoed in her chest. "Weakness? You made me your weakness," she whispered. "Yes." Silence stretched. She hugged her knees to her chest. Her voice was barely audible. "If you really cared about me, you wouldn't have destroyed my life without my consent." His jaw clenched. "You're right." The admission stunned her. "I was wrong," he said. "About everything. I should have told you the truth from the beginning. I should have given you a choice." Her eyes burned. "Then do it now." He met her gaze. "Stay," he said quietly, "or I will fake your death and erase you from existence. Give you a new life somewhere no one can find you." Her breath caught. "You would really let me go?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because if I keep you here against your will, I will become the monster you already think I am." Silence fell like a verdict. She stood slowly, her legs still weak. She walked past him, touched the door. Her hand hovered over the handle. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to escape, to disappear, to take the life he was offering her. She turned back to him. "You killed my mother's killers," she said. "Yes." "You kept me alive." "Yes." "You destroyed my—" "Yes." Her voice broke. "You also saved it." He closed his eyes. She took a step toward him. I don't forgive you, she whispered. And I don't trust you. He opened his eyes. I know, but I'm tired of running. His breath hitched. I'll stay, she said. For now. The relief on his face looked like pain. That night, he slept on the floor beside her bed. Not touching her. Not claiming her. Just staying. And for the first time since she was taken, she slept. The first thing Saraphina noticed when she woke up was the silence. Not the hollow, suffocating silence of captivity, but a softer kind, a silence that felt held. She turned her head slightly. Dante was still on the floor beside her bed. On his back, one arm draped over his eyes, still fully dressed, still awake. He hadn't moved all night. Something inside her chest cracked. Not painfully, gently. She sat up slowly. Her muscles ached. Her head throbbed. Her eyes burned from crying. He lowered his arm. Their eyes met. Neither of them spoke. The moment stretched. Fragile. Uncertain. Did you sleep? He asked quietly. Yes. His jaw tightened. Good. He stood. Moved toward the door. Stopped. I'll have food brought, he said. Eat. Please. He left without waiting for her answer. The tray arrived. Not prison food. Real food. Warm bread. Fruit. Eggs. Coffee. A small mercy. She stared at it for a long time before touching anything. When she finally ate, she cried. Not from sadness. From relief. The rules changed after that. Subtly, but unmistakably. Her door was no longer locked. The guards no longer followed her inside rooms. She was allowed back into the garden, into the library, onto the balcony. Lucien never returned. Dante kept his distance. Always nearby, never invading her space, never touching her, never commanding her, only watching, protecting, waiting. Days passed, then weeks. They started sharing meals. At opposite ends of the long dining table at first, in silence. Then with brief, careful conversation, she learned he liked black coffee, that he hated loud music, that he had nightmares he never spoke about. He learned she hated eggs, that she used to paint, that she talked in her sleep when she was stressed. The tension between them shifted, from fear to wariness, to something else, something dangerous. One evening, a storm rolled in. Thunder cracked. The lights flickered. She froze. Her breath shortened. Her hands trembled. Dante was at the far end of the room. He noticed instantly. He crossed the space without thinking. Stopped inches away. Didn't touch her. You're safe, he said quietly. Her voice shook. My mother died in a storm. His face changed. Softened. Broken. He stepped closer. Rested his forehead against hers. Didn't kiss her. Didn't hold her. Just breathed with her. Her hands clenched in his suit jacket. For a moment, she forgot where she was, who he was, what he had done. She just knew she didn't feel alone anymore. That night, she went to his room. She didn't knock. She stood in the doorway. He looked up from his desk, surprised. You said I could leave, she said quietly. Yes, but I didn't. His breath hitched. She walked toward him, slow, deliberate. I don't trust you, she said. I know. I don't forgive you. I know. But I feel safe with you. The words hung between them. He stood slowly. You shouldn't, he said. She placed her hand against his chest. I shouldn't feel a lot of things. His heart was racing. So was hers. He leaned down slightly. Stopped. Waiting. She kissed him first. Soft. Shaking. Uncertain. He didn't move. Didn't deepen it. Didn't claim her. He pulled away gently. Don't do this out of trauma, he said hoarsely. Her eyes burned. I'm doing it out of choice. He kissed her back. Slow. Controlled. Like he was afraid to break her. She cried into his mouth. He held her like she might vanish. They didn't sleep together. They lay on the bed, fully clothed, wrapped around each other, breathing in sync. For the first time, neither of them felt alone. The next morning, everything changed. His head of security burst into the room. They found you, he said. Dante went still. Who? The Russians. Saraphina's blood turned to ice. Dante looked at her. His voice was calm. We're out of time. The mansion went into lockdown within minutes. Steel shutters slid down over the windows. Iron gates slammed shut. Armed guards flooded the corridors. Dante's voice carried through the halls, sharp and controlled, issuing orders like a general preparing for the end of the world. They're testing our perimeter, his head of security said. Snipers on a ridge. 2 vehicles breached the outer road. Saraphina stood in the corner of the war room, barefoot, wrapped in Dante's jacket. Her heart pounded violently. The calm he had shown her only minutes ago was gone. This Dante was something else entirely. Cold, ruthless, deadly. They're not here for my territory, Dante said quietly. They're here for her. Her stomach dropped. I caused this, she whispered. He turned to her instantly. No, he said firmly. You are not the weapon. They are. Explosions thundered outside. The walls shook. She screamed. He pulled her into his chest automatically, held her, buried her face against him. You will not leave my side, he said into her hair. Not now. Not ever. Gunfire erupted. The war had begun. The Russians breached the east wing first. The sound of bullets tore through marble and glass. Guards fell. Blood smeared across white walls. Dante moved like a machine. Strategic, unemotional, precise. He dragged Saraphina through secret corridors, down hidden stairwells, past bodies, past fire, past screaming men. You said you'd let me go, she sobbed. I said I let you live, he snapped. This is what that costs. A grenade detonated. The blast threw them both into a wall. Her ears rang. Her vision blurred. He shielded her with his body. His shoulder bled. He didn't even flinch. They kept moving. They reached the underground bunker. Steel doors sealed behind them. For a moment, it was silent. Too silent. She collapsed against him, shaking, crying. I'm going to die, she whispered. He cupped her face. No, he said fiercely. Not tonight. The bunker door exploded inward. Smoke flooded the room. Russian soldiers stormed in. Gunfire shredded the air. Dante pulled her behind a concrete pillar. Return fire. 2 men dropped. A third rushed him. Saraphina screamed. She grabbed the fallen guard's gun. Hands shaking, pulled the trigger. The man fell, dead. She stared at her hands, sobbing. I killed him. Dante grabbed her face. You survived, he said. That's all that matters. More men poured in. Dante was shot in the side, then again in the leg. He still kept fighting. Blood soaked his shirt. He staggered. She caught him, held him up. I'm not losing you, she sobbed. He smiled weakly. Too late, he murmured. He collapsed. She screamed his name. Lucien appeared in the smoke. Alive, bleeding, gun in hand. You need to run, he shouted. They're everywhere. She shook her head. I'm not leaving him. Lucien dragged Dante over his shoulder. You love him, he said grimly. So don't let him die. They fled through the emergency tunnel. Bullets chased them. Lucien was hit in the back. He shoved them forward. I betrayed you once, he said hoarsely. I won't do it again. He turned, went back into the smoke. Gun blazing. Saraphina sobbed. Dante lost consciousness in her arms. She dragged him the rest of the way. Out into the storm. They reached the cliff road. A helicopter descended through the rain. Dante's men pulled them inside. She pressed her hands to his wounds, screaming for him to wake up. Blood pooled on the floor. His eyes fluttered open. Don't cry, he whispered. I told you not tonight. Then his eyes closed again. The helicopter lifted into the sky. The mansion burned beneath them. 3 days later, she sat beside his hospital bed. Machines beeped softly. He was alive. Barely. The doctor said it was a miracle. She held his hand. Wouldn't let go. If he died, she would die too. The world did not end when Dante survived. It changed. Slowly. Quietly. Irreversibly. Saraphina lived in the hospital for 3 weeks. She slept in a chair beside Dante's bed. Ate vending machine food. Refused to leave. She brushed his hair back when it fell into his eyes. Held his hand when machines beeped too fast. Whispered his name like a prayer. He didn't wake up for 9 days. On the 10th, he squeezed her fingers. She burst into tears so violently the nurse had to hold her upright. You're not allowed to die, she sobbed. Do you hear me? His voice was weak. Bossy. She laughed through tears. You scared me. Good, he murmured. Now we're even. Recovery was hell. He had 3 surgeries. Physical therapy. Nightmares. Pain that left him shaking. She stayed through all of it. Bathed him. Fed him. Held him when he woke up screaming. He never once pushed her away. Not when he was weak. Not when he was angry. Not when he hated himself. You should leave, he said one night. She didn't look up from changing his bandage. I'm not going anywhere. You deserve a normal life. She met his eyes. Define normal. Silence. Then he laughed quietly. When he could finally walk again, he made a choice no one expected. He dismantled half his empire. Sold off territory. Burned records. Paid off rivals. Let old enemies walk away alive. His men thought he'd lost his mind. You're weakening us, his consigliera said. No, Dante said calmly. I'm ending this war. He took Saraphina to a small coastal town. A place with no bodyguards. No weapons. No gates. Just ocean, wind, and silence. She cried the first time she slept with the windows open. Because she wasn't afraid. One evening, months later, they stood barefoot on the beach. The sun melted into the water. He took her hands, his palms still scarred. You can still leave, he said quietly. She smiled sadly. You're still giving me exits. I always will. She stepped closer. I'm not staying because I'm trapped. I know. I'm staying because I choose you. His breath hitched. He dropped to one knee. No ring. No speech. Just truth. Marry me, he said hoarsely. Not because I'm rich. Not because I saved you. Not because you're afraid to be alone. Marry me because you see me and you still want me. She fell apart, crying, laughing, kissing his face. Yes, she whispered. Yes. They married quietly. No press. No crime families. No guns. Just waves. White linen. Bare feet. A small gold ring. He cried when she walked toward him. Didn't hide it. Didn't care. Years later, they had a daughter. Her name was Amara. She had Seraphina's eyes, Dante's stubbornness, and a laugh that healed everything broken in him. He left the mafia completely, burned his last ledger, changed his name, built a legitimate business, lived like a man who had finally earned peace. One night, Seraphina sat on the porch with Amara asleep on her chest. Dante wrapped a blanket around them. You regret staying? He asked quietly. She shook her head. You regret taking me? He kissed her forehead. I regret the pain. But not me. Never you. They didn't get a perfect love story. They got a real one. Messy, dark, redemptive, earned, and unbreakable.